if you've just finished Baldur's Gate 3 or replayed it too many times and want similar games to play. The usual recommendations are Dragon Age Origins, as well as Larian's own Divinity, Original Sin 1 and 2. There's also the Pillars of Eternity games from mainstream recommendations. The Pathfinder games from Owlcat and their Warhammer RPG are also great. But if you've already played all these, there are other games out there just as bold, just as brutal, and just as full of branching consequences. They just don't get talked about enough. These are some lesser-known RPGs like that offer massive replayability, powerful decision-making, and that same feeling of shaping a unique story through your choices. If you end up liking the content, please subscribe for more, and I'd appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up and tell me what you think down below. Love to hear it. If Baldur's Gate 3 reminded you of how fun turn-based D&D can be, Solasta is the game that takes that exact tabletop energy and injects it straight into your monitor. High ground advantage, lighting conditions, concentration management, vertical tactical spaces that completely change how a battle plays out. It makes positioning feel like the ultimate weapon. When a fight breaks out on a crumbling castle wall and you send a goblin flying into the abyss with a Thunderwave spell, it hits that same thrilling rush. The crucial difference is in how it approaches storytelling. This doesn't give you pre-written, dramatic companions like Asterion or Shadowheart. Instead, you build your entire party from scratch. You choose their personalities, their quirks, and how they interact during conversations. It's a fun twist, but it also means emotional investment comes from the adventure itself rather than deep character arcs. The world reacts to your team's backgrounds, so a rogue might charm NPCs in ways a noble cleric can't. But don't expect lengthy romance scenes or cinematic presentations. And to be fair, you feel that AA budget ceiling pretty fast. Animations are stiff. Camera angles can struggle in tight vertical spaces. The story is solid, but rarely surprising. It doesn't have sprawling hub cities or cinematic cutscenes. This is a game less about immersion through spectacle. Rather, it's about pure strategy, solving encounters like deadly chess problems where every move matters. But here's the part that deserves more credit. It gives you genuine tactical creativity. You can shove enemies off ledges, sneak a rogue into position before combat even starts, build weird multi-class combinations that shouldn't work but absolutely do. It rewards cleverness every time the dice hits the table. If you love BG3 for the D&D mechanics, Solasta is one of the most satisfying tactical RPGs you can play. It may not be as high budget, but it understands the game beneath the game.
Oh, it's more like a large bet.
If you love the sense of stepping into a classic fantasy world with real consequences and dark undertones, Black Geyser, Couriers of Darkness deserves way more attention than it gets. It's an isometric CRPG very much inspired by the original Baldur's Gate games. Morally gray kingdoms, scheming gods, and a world where greed is literally a creeping curse that changes the behavior of society over time. You'll notice quests starting hopeful, but slowly becoming twisted as people choose selfishness over compassion. The game uses this theme constantly, making you feel like your journey is happening in a civilization on the brink of collapse. Combat has a familiar real-time with pause style, so it's less turn-based tactical and more classic Infinity Engine. But spell interactions, area control, and party roles still matter heavily. It encourages careful positioning and strategic spell use rather than button mashing. Some dungeons are surprisingly challenging, forcing you to experiment with different character builds and party compositions. The writing and world building are where it feels most aligned with BG3. Many quests unfold in unexpected ways depending on your decisions, and there are multiple endings shaped by how you choose to handle corruption. But here is where the caveats roll in. Production value isn't close to Larian's. Character animations are stiff, voice acting is minimal, and the UI can feel clunky. Reviews criticize bugs and pacing at launch, but several patches have improved things. The story isn't trying to be goofy or overly edgy. It wants to be a serious fantasy tale with weight and consequence. It's not flashy, but it has a big heart for old-school role-playing. If you want more games where choices shape the fate of an entire kingdom rather than just your party, this is one of the best hidden picks after BG3. It won't blow your mind visually, but it might surprise you with how your decisions poison or preserve the world around you.
I'll go wherever I'm needed.
Take Baldur's Gate's morally uncomfortable, messy consequences, the kind that haunt you hours later, and drop them to a brutal frozen apocalypse where everyone is desperate, dangerous, or both. That's Wasteland 3. Instead of dragons and divine prophecies, you're dealing with cults worshipping machine gods, a royal family of psychopaths, and survivors forced into horrifying choices just to see tomorrow. And you're the one who has to decide who deserves help and who doesn't. This game is relentless when it comes to reactivity. You say one wrong thing to a power-hungry faction leader, and entire questline shift. You make a seemingly harmless decision in the first act. The repercussions somehow come in Act 3. It builds the same feeling BG3 mastered, that the world doesn't revolve around you. It evolves because of you, and not always for the better. Combat is tactical and explosive, literally. Cover matters. Elemental effects chain together. You can charge into battle with robotic companions or weaponized wildlife. Builds get wild, to the point where a clown makeup sniper with a pet goat becomes an unstoppable killing machine. It's brutal, chaotic, and often hilarious in the darkest possible way. But here's the caveat. This game is not hopeful. The humor is twisted. The setting is bleak. Relationships are alliances of convenience, not deep friendships or sizzling romances like in BG3. Some players find the tone too cynical, too abrasive. Inventory management can become a chore, and difficulty spikes punish experimentation until you master the systems. Yet beneath the grime is a role-playing experience few games dare deliver. Freedom with consequences you can't take back, a narrative that forces you into uncomfortable leadership, and a sense of survival politics instead of heroic destiny. If BG3 made you question whether you're the hero or the villain, Wasteland 3 turns that doubt into its core design.
Oh man, didn't you like my joke?
If what hooked you in BG3 was the feeling that you were leading a campaign, commanding allies, shaping the future of nations, and making political decisions that ripple across a continent, then Expeditions Rome delivers that energy in a way few RPGs do. Instead of a chosen hero with divine powers, you're a young Roman who rises to command armies through tactical battles, diplomacy, intimidation, or sheer brilliance. Every decision reflects back on the Republic or Empire, depending on your choices, and your companions react to your values in ways that feel personal and earned, not scripted for convenience. Combat uses turn-based tactics that feel like a grounded version of BG3's encounters. Fewer fireballs, more spears and shields. Positioning still matters, but now you're also thinking about supply lines, troop morale, and battlefield formations. Your squad has personalities, loyalties, and opinions that evolve. You're not just controlling units. You're managing people, soldiers who believe in your leadership or question it if you become too ruthless or too soft. The writing is surprisingly strong, exploring themes like power, cultural identity, slavery, and the cost of conquest. Conversations can shift entire political maps, and side quests often turn into heated ideological arguments. Rome isn't portrayed as glorious and pure. It's conflicted, morally brutal, and full of agendas. That is an example of similar messy dilemmas in both games. Where it falls short is presentation. The budget isn't massive. Cutscenes are minimal. Environments lack the cinematic spark of Larian's work, and facial animations can feel stiff. And while story branches widely, the emotional bonds aren't as dramatic or romantic. But don't mistake subtlety for weakness. Expeditions Rome is one of the most reactive tactical RPGs ever made. If you love being the leader in Baldur's Gate, not just the fighter, this game deserves your full attention.
She's been sick for 2 days now. The healer is...
This is where Baldur's Gate 3's philosophical DNA comes from. Before Larian made sarcasm and soul-searching a staple of modern CRPGs, Planescape Torment explored the question of what changes the nature of a man. Torment thrives on existentialism. You play as the Nameless One, a corpse who keeps waking up after death, missing pieces of his past life. Every companion, like a floating skull with a filthy sense of humor or a warrior whose skin is tattooed with vows, has their own purpose entwined with yours. It's not about saving the world. It's about discovering why you exist and whether redemption is even possible after countless sins. Now, similarities to BG3 may seem indirect as there's no party shenanigans with vampire boyfriends here. But the shared core is choice through conversation. Your class, your morality, your fate, Almost everything is shaped through dialogue. Battles are secondary. The real combat is verbal, emotional, philosophical. In Baldur's Gate, decisions decide who lives, who loves you, and who turns against you. This did that decades earlier and pushed harder on consequences tied to identity, not just tactics. Of course, the flaws are obvious by today's standards. The UI is archaic. Combat is clunky and often unnecessary. Visually, it's a relic, charming if you love retro art, but a barrier for players expecting 3D spectacle. It demands reading, patience, and reflection. And yet the writing has never been topped. Many argue it remains the best narrative RPG ever created. If BG3 made you think about morality, trauma, companionship, and the burden of power, Planescape Torment will make you question yourself. At first glance, this game seems way too cute to compare to BG3. Tabletop visuals, hex grid movement, adorable character designs. But beneath that charming exterior lies one of the most challenging and unpredictable RPG experiences available today. For the King blends turn-based combat, overworld exploration, and roguelike structure into a campaign where survival depends on team strategy, resource management, and dice rolls that always feel personal. It taps directly into the tabletop emotion that BG3 revives. The moment you make a risky decision, knowing the dice might betray you. A perfect strike could turn the tide, or a failed roll could doom your entire squad. Every encounter becomes a story of triumph or disaster, influenced by your build choices, cooperation, and a little bit of fate. While BG3 gives you a party of narrative powerhouses, For the King gives you fragile adventurers you learn to protect, and every victory feels earned because failure is always inches away. Replayability is massive. Each campaign rearranges the world, enemies, items, and dungeon layouts. You're constantly adjusting tactics, experimenting with class combos, and discovering new synergies. The more you play, the more unlocks you earn, not as grinding busywork, but as meaningful tools for new journeys. This hits the same addictive loop that keeps players returning to BG3 for different builds and routes through the story. Here's the trade-off. The story is simple. There are no long romance arcs, no heavy cinematic cutscenes, no dramatic political web. It doesn't try to be a grand narrative epic. It tries to be a fantasy adventure generator, using dice as the ultimate storyteller. And combat can be punishing, especially if RNG decides it doesn't like you today. But that tension is what makes victory feel electric. For the King delivers endless campaigns full of improvisation, disaster, laughter, and clutch wins you'll remember long after.
Downstairs and scan relics.
In-Case starts with a premise that feels like Baldur's Gate 3 if you swap the Mind Flayers for a giant, mysterious alien dome that traps anyone who enters. Inside, the old world collapses and a new society emerges, full of factions vying for power, forbidden technology, and moral dilemmas with no clean answers. You're thrown into chaos from the start and forced to define who you become through your actions, not your intentions. In-Case leans heavily into choice in consequence. Dialogue checks can prevent entire combat encounters or unlock dark paths where your character's ethics slowly dissolve. Side characters react to your background and your behavior instead of treating you like a blank slate. It's a grounded, serious CRPG that wants you to feel the weight of survival. Combat blends tactical turns with environmental tricks like energy fields, explosives, drones, but it's also less polished than Larian systems. The early game can be slow, and difficulty ramps aggressively if you don't understand the mechanics. Animations are stiff, UI can get cluttered, and some builds feel weaker without proper planning. Narratively, it shines in how it captures a society collapsing under the pressure of the unknown, isolation, paranoia, and ideological warfare. Factions offer wildly different routes through the story. Some violent, some political, some deeply strange. The late game especially goes places you won't expect, leaning into mind-bending sci-fi territory that feels bold and weird in the best way. It's not as cinematic or companion-driven as Baldur's Gate, and it definitely wears its AA limitations openly. But if you're searching for an RPG that values your decisions, lets you roleplay without rails, and builds tension through world-changing consequences, In-Case is one of the most underrated modern CRPGs out there.
You to come and take a look. Seems like
Post. I know, I'm
If
weird.
Baldur's Gate 3 fascinated you because it let you be morally twisted, seducing evil, siding with darkness, or reshaping the world with pure authority. Tyranny takes that idea and builds the entire game around it. Evil has already won. The Overlord Kairos controls nearly everything. You're not fighting the tyrant. You are the tyrant's enforcer. Your choices aren't between good and bad. They're between different flavors of oppression. Will you uphold strict law and order, crush resistance brutally, or secretly undermine the empire from within? Your decisions carry consequences that ripple through factions, companions, and entire regions. You're constantly challenged, not with what's right, but how willing are you to impose your will. Combat mixes tactical planning with class-less character building, letting you craft weird synergy combos with your party. Spells can be custom crafted, combining runes and expressions to create devastating magic. One of the coolest systems any CRPG has attempted. Better yet, companions react strongly to you, obeying you out of fear, loyalty, manipulation, or pure self-interest. Their relationships aren't clean arcs, they're tense power struggles that evolve dynamically. This game is bold, but not flawless. It's smaller in scale than BG3, and the story ends fast, clearly setting up a sequel we haven't gotten yet. Exploration areas lack the interactivity and cinematic polish people expect today. Some builds become extremely strong early, breaking difficulty balance. But where Tyranny excels is in role-playing with real teeth. It puts you in uncomfortable positions and forces you to justify your identity, your control, your abuses, or your rebellion. If BG3's dark endings and hard moral choices drew you in, Tyranny will sink its hooks even deeper. It's one of the only RPGs that doesn't just let you be the villain. It asks you what kind of villain you are. If you crave RPGs where every decision cuts deep, this one is a masterclass in consequence. The Age of Decadence takes place in the ruins of a fallen empire, a brutal world of assassins, scheming nobles, cultists seeking ancient power, and survivors fighting over the bones of civilization that destroyed itself. There's no chosen one or prophecy, just your wits, and the warning that failure is always on the table. This is one of the most reactive RPGs ever built. Almost every quest can be solved multiple ways: diplomacy, deception, stealth, assassination, or raw violence. And the game does not care if you punch above your weight and get instantly humbled. Many builds can go hours without a single fight, while others specialize in combat so brutal that one tactical mistake can end your story permanently. The writing never pulls punches. Allies betray you, deals collapse, and people die because you misread the situation. Choice matters here more than in almost any other RPG, sometimes painfully so. But this isn't a game pretending to be something it's not. The combat system is dense, tactical, and ruthlessly punishing. The camera and visual style are functional, not cinematic. There are no companions, no romance, no cozy campfire scenes like BG3. Some players will hate the harshness, calling it unfair, and the game shrugs, because that struggle is the whole point. What makes it so similar is the sense of writing your own story, not following one. Here the world bends or breaks, depending on who you choose to be, and your journey might end in disgrace or triumph based purely on your decisions and intelligence. It's unapologetic, cruel, and brilliant. If you want a role-playing challenge where your brain is your greatest weapon, this is one of the best hidden gems out there. Underrail takes the philosophy where every skill point changes how you survive the world and pushes it to an extreme. This is an isometric, old-school RPG set in a claustrophobic post-apocalyptic metro system where the surface world is long gone and humanity clings to life underground. There are no cinematic flourishes, no party banter, no hand-holding tutorials. Just you, your build, and a dangerous labyrinth full of factions who don't care if you make it past tomorrow. What connects this to BG3 isn't the visuals, it's the freedom. You can create nearly any kind of character: a stealthy psychic assassin, a crossbow trap master, a heavy armor tank with chemical bombs. Whatever insane idea you can theory craft is usually viable. And the game demands smart play. Combat is tactical, lethal, and heavily dependent on positioning and turn economy. Every encounter feels like a puzzle with multiple solutions, but the wrong guess can end your run fast. There is branching narrative here, but it's delivered with a more subdued style, not flashy voice acting, just impactful choices about who to align with and what side of the fractured underground future you want to shape. Exploration is tense and rewarding, full of hidden stashes and deadly surprises for those who wander unprepared. And player agency dominates. Joining a faction can drastically change the missions and story you get. Now, the caveats. This game is hard. Difficulty isn't just spikes, it's the entire mountain. QL features are minimal, backtracking is common, and early builds are unforgiving if you spread yourself too thin. The writing is smart but muted, not filled with dramatic companion arcs or cinematic emotional beats. Some will call that depth, others will call it dry. But if you enjoyed Baldur's Gate because you love mastering systems, thinking several turns ahead, and crafting a character identity through mechanics as much as dialogue, Underrail will scratch that same itch. Shadowrun Hong Kong takes the choice-driven RPG storytelling philosophy and channels it into a gritty, neon-drenched future where every ally is a risk and every job could be your last. It trades swords and sorcery for cybernetics and street magic, but the real similarity is in how deeply it cares about your party, not just as combat units, but as broken, complicated people you learn to fight with and for. Each companion has personal missions, traumas, beliefs, and boundaries that can drastically shift how your adventure plays out. The tactical combat isn't flashy, but it is every bit as thoughtful. Timed abilities, positioning, cover, and hacking all feed into the moment-to-moment tension. The hacking adds a whole new battlefield layer, feeling like a more strategic version of quick hacks. And thematically, Shadowrun nails the core of what makes Baldur's Gate special. A world where power always corrupts, institutions always lie, and rebellion is the closest thing to freedom. Now the caveats, and they matter. Presentation is low budget, mostly static conversation screens, no cinematic performances, and smaller maps rather than a sprawling city. You'll spend more time reading than watching. Some players bounce off because it's tactical and narrative heavy instead of spectacle driven. But that slower, more intimate style pays off, especially when a mission's outcome hits hard emotionally. If what you love most about BG3 was exploring messy relationships, making morally gray decisions, and trying to protect people who feel real, then Shadowrun Hong Kong is one of the most underrated role-playing experiences you can get. It won't dazzle your eyes, but it will get inside your head. Now, this one seems wildly different from Baldur's Gate at first glance. A comic book art style, procedural storytelling, and characters who age over decades. But don't let the visuals fool you. Few RPGs capture the living, evolving narrative of a role-playing campaign the way Wildermyth does. Your heroes aren't static archetypes. They grow, fall in love, lose limbs, gain mythical powers, retire, or die permanently. Their legacy continues into future campaigns, meaning every playthrough becomes part of a connected universe shaped entirely by your choices. This is where it lines up beautifully with BG3's narrative agency. You'll have moments where a humble farmer becomes a legendary shapeshifter, or a rogue sacrifices part of their humanity for power, or two characters start a family and their children later join your party. These story beats aren't pre-scripted. They emerge dynamically based on traits, relationships, and randomized events. It often feels like the game is DMing just for you, adapting the world around what your characters become. Combat is tactical and turn-based, but with fantastical twists, like scenery-based abilities where mages infuse objects to create surprise attacks. It's easier to learn, but still offers depth through advanced synergy between abilities and roles. Campaigns blend procedural maps with handcrafted arcs, providing both replayability and emotional storytelling. But there are trade-offs. You won't find massive cinematic cutscenes or AAA production values. The writing style can be a bit whimsical for players who want dark, epic drama, and some procedural events repeat over multiple campaigns if you stick with the game long enough. It's also not voiced, which makes some moments feel less intense than they deserve. Yet despite that, Wildermyth makes you care through personal myth building. It doesn't just let you pick dialogue, it remembers your choices across generations. If BG3 made you emotionally attached to your party, this might hit you even harder.